The idea of censorship and burning books has been around for centuries and can even be traced back to book burnings done by German Nazis. However, in recent years, censorship in schools has been highly debated. Books such as Fahrenheit 451, Of Mice and Men, and The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn have all been censored for language, racism, and other factors, and parents are the ones to blame for this. Parents shouldn't have a say in what their children read in school. In a blog post by Emily Gage, she states that according to James LaRue, the director of the ALA Office for Intellectual Freedom, he states that books are banned for language most of the time, but were written a long time ago when such language was accepted. So they shouldn't ban these books because they were a part of history. Before we discuss why censorship shouldn't affect what children read in school, we should first discuss what it is and why it's important, or how it works. According to Ken Petrus, censorship is defined as the forbidding, blocking, limiting, or obstructing of certain information for a specific reason. The type of censorship that schools focus on specifically is called direct censorship. The National Council of Teachers of English says that schools specifically focus on direct censorship, which is when principals and other members of the school board obstruct certain material that a teacher cannot use in his or her classroom. Books are censored because their content may appear controversial or inappropriate, but this prevents students from reading them for their importance. Petrus says that censorship is only required when it appears to be the only way to avoid intellectually harmful outcomes for the student. Censorship has to be approved by court officials and will only be approved if the court official can prove serious harm in the literary content. But who exactly censors books? In a speech given by M. Lee Kian, it is stated that parents are the main censors of books because they either don't agree with the content or they find it inappropriate. Not only do parents disagree with what their children read in school, but they also disagree on how the school is run. In this quote by Jade Bushman and K.P. Haas, many parents, for whatever reason, are often frustrated about their relationships with the school. As a result, they strike out at something very specific, what is taught in the classroom, especially if they believe that it is incongruous to their values. It is described how parents lash out at the school system just because they do not follow the same values. It may sound as if the school system is the only ones affected by censorship, but in fact, students and many other members of society can also be affected. First, it is quite easy for a case of censorship to get way out of hand. Town states that parents, students, and principals are all initial players in game challenge or book challenge, and in addition could be the teacher's colleagues, the school board, and eventually the court system. If the issue is not resolved in its early stages, sides will be taken, harsh words will be spoken, and each person involved in the case will think that they're on the side of the right. This becomes very stressful to everyone in the case. Censorship leads to some major threats and problems in students' education. According to the NCTE, censorship leaves students with an inadequate and distorted picture of the ideas, values, and problems in their culture. This leads to many writers being perceived the wrong way. Writers often represent their culture in their works. Yet, particularly because censorship, or at least the threat of censorship, writers are inadequately represented in schools and may not be represented for their best work, but their safest or their least offensive work. Lastly, when students find out a book they've been reading has been censored, an increasing amount of interest in said book arises. Petrus says that when schools censor ideas, students become increasingly interested in subjects and typically find a way to discover means to gain access to these ideas. Several court cases involving censorship have come up in recent years. Here we will discuss a few of these courses and how they played out. Some people may not know it, but the censorship violates a student's First Amendment rights of freedom of speech. It also limits them from reading intellectually valuable material. Lee Kian talks about a Supreme Court case known as the Island Tree School District versus Pico in New York City. Solely 9 books were removed from this high school. The information presented to them was banned solely on disagreement in their content. What we can take from this case is that it is unconstitutional to remove books for vulgarity. Ken Petras wrote about another case that took place in Minnesota at Yellow Medicine East High School District. The school tried to ban Little House on the Prairie after one parent complained about offensive content. The MCLU, or the Maine Civil Liberties Union, argued that educators should use the offensive content in the book as an opportunity to discuss persuasive nature of racism and how things were when the story took place. The board refused to ban the book, but later suggested that the school might choose a better option. Parents shouldn't have a say in what their children read in school because it prevents those students from getting the best possible information from them. Censorship also causes problems involving the school system, the school board, teachers, and parents, and even in some cases, the court system, as we discussed earlier. Great literary works like Fahrenheit 451, Of Mice and Men, and The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn should not be taken away from students because of irrational content presented in them that was common during the time the book was written. There's a lot of history represented in these books. Therefore, books like these and others like it should be cherished and represented in the school system and not taken for granted.